I've been a longtime fan of the Resident Evil series. I've played almost all of the games, except for, I think, Resident Evil 3. And basically, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat that this is an old school game. So, people expecting this to play out like Gears of War or any of the other typical third-person shooters is in for an unpleasant surprise. But for anyone who is a big fan of Resident Evil 4's breakthrough style of gameplay, then you're definitely going to find a lot of enjoyment out of Resident Evil 5 because they're similar in terms of game design and enemies and stuff like that. Resident Evil 5 takes place in Africa. You play as Chris Redfield. He works for the BSAA, and he's sent there to like investigate this bioterrorism weapons deal, and he's accompanied by this local BSAA agent called Sheva Alomar. Similarly to Resident Evil 4, things don't go quite as planned, and you're going to end up fighting a bunch of infected villagers and stuff like that, and basically they're just the tip of the iceberg. You're going to be fighting a wide variety of different enemies throughout the game. I don't want to really give away too much of the story, but it's definitely pretty good compared to almost every other story I've ever seen in a typical third-person shooter. You care about the characters if you've been a long-time fan of the series. There's a lot of gorgeous cutscenes that help the narrative progress, and while there are a couple sort of cheesy moments or corny moments or whatever, the overall story is really good. There's also some solid voice acting and some really cool fight scenes towards the end of the game, and a lot of the cutscenes do almost seem like you're watching a movie. The combat hasn't drastically changed from Resident Evil 4 at all. The combat still unfolds in an over-the-shoulder type of view. Certain action sequences or cutscenes still revolve around button prompts, and you still can't move and shoot at the same time. But that's perfectly fine because this is a survival kind of genre. There's not really any horror aspects to this game anymore, but this is not supposed to be like a certain just run and gun, plow through everything easily without even thinking like Gears of War or anything on the lower difficulties at all. I think this is only really a problem for people who haven't played Resident Evil before. I can understand that the gameplay may not appeal to everyone, especially if you've played Gears of War, but you gotta understand that that's a different genre entirely. The game design is just entirely different from Gears of War. However, unlike Gears of War, 99% of the enemies that you face in this game don't have any guns, so they're not going to be attacking you from long range, and instead they go rush up to you instead of taking behind cover, which basically renders a cover system entirely useless in this game. Also, the game doesn't exactly give you boatloads of ammunition, so accuracy is a big aspect in terms of surviving this game. Besides, when you're trying to get accurate shots off, you wouldn't want to move and shoot at the same time anyway. Mobility isn't really an issue here either because you can run faster than pretty much every enemy in the game in order to get clear shots off, in order to distance yourself, in order to take your enemies down. And also you could have the ability to walk sideways, which is an improvement over Resident Evil 4. There are a couple different ways of taking your enemies down. You could obviously just shoot him in the head so he staggers a bit, and then you perform a roundhouse kick or a falcon punch on him to throw him to the ground, and then it might stagger back a few enemies around him as well. Or you could just trip him up in the leg and then kick him, or that'll slow him down and provide you some more mobility in order to escape or line your shots up some more. You could also execute enemies similar to Gears of War by performing curb stomps. And also, if you just shoot him in the arm, you could also just falcon punch him, unlike Resident Evil 4, where you wouldn't be able to do that. You could do that here. There's still basically the same upgrade system as in Resident Evil 4. There's a wide variety of modern weapons to use, like the AK-47, MP5, M4. There's about 4 different pistols, 3 different sniper rifles, a couple different shotguns as well. So there's a wide variety of things. Basically, there's different categories to upgrade the weapons with, such as their firepower, ammo capacity, firing rate, reload speed time, stuff like that. There's only 9 slots that you could have to store your items and stuff in, and basically this is slightly annoying, but you're only going to be needing about 2 or 3 weapons throughout the whole story mode anyway, and it does add to the sort of like survival element to the game in terms of what you need in order to progress through, as the game doesn't give you a lot of ammunition. I mean, it could have had more, it could have added 3 slots easily, but it doesn't bug me very much at all. There's a wide variety of locations and just different objectives to do in the game that it makes it feel fresh, and you don't really know what to expect around the corner. Boss fights are epic as usual in Resident Evil games. There's a couple different specific sequences. There's some puzzle elements in the game sometimes. There's a point where you're on the back of a Hummer and you're mounting machine guns while there's a bunch of villagers on motorcycles and you just pick them off. Like I said before, boss fights are really epic and they require a lot of strategy to take down. They're fun to play through with a friend or even with your AI partner. The game does require a lot of co-op parts where you and your partner split up. Oh, and also if you're just trying to take down a big boss or just like a horde of enemies, it does require teamwork. There are specific gameplay aspects, such as being able to save your partner. Now, I've been hearing a lot of bitching about how horrible the AI of Sheva is, and that's just blatantly incorrect. I mean, yeah, maybe in the first 2 weeks of when this game was released, but I'm sure that shit is patched up now, because I'm not experiencing hardly any of the issues that anyone's talking about. Sure, she sometimes wastes a bit of ammunition, and she heals you at about the slightest sign of injury, but she has a good shot, and she saved you quite a lot in the game. I mean, if you think she's bad, then why don't you just try and play Halo Reach by yourself on Legendary while you watch Emil drive off with his mongoose over the cliff on the last mission. Ugh. The game is around 10 to 12 hours the first time, depending on what difficulty you're playing on and if you're a series veteran. But basically, there's a lot of replay value here if you want to play it on another difficulty. You could also unlock infinite ammo guns and a lot of collectible figurines and more data in terms of like backstories of a lot of the characters. So I think there's a lot of depth and replay value here that most other games simply don't have nowadays. There's also mercenaries mode to check out, and basically you could either play this solo or with another partner. Basically, you just fight zombies off and you try and extend the time and you just try and survive as long as possible to unlock more levels and more characters. There's a lot of classic characters in the Resident Evil series that you can unlock. You shouldn't look any further than mercenaries mode if you want tension and sweaty palm gameplay, because you're going to have a lot of tense moments in there. I mean, if you like a really good challenge and just like a lot of adrenaline and excitement in terms of surviving against these zombies, then you're definitely going to have a hell of a good time in that mode. In terms of the audio-visual presentation, the game looks phenomenal for its time. There's a lot of great detail on the environments. Bosses look spectacular. The environments are all varied and look really nice. Character models look great. Especially during the cutscenes, their facial animations look really, really good and really realistic. And like I said before, the cutscenes resemble like a movie, so it's just like watching a movie. Though sometimes there is screen tearing during the cutscenes, but it's not that big of a deal for me. I know that better looking games have come out now, like Mass Effect 2 and Gears of War 3 and Crysis 2. But this is still one of the best looking games on the 360 now, and it was at one point the best looking game on the Xbox 360 when it was released. The audio department is actually just about as good as the visuals in this game. The voice acting for the most part is really good, and the sound effects are definitely spot on for all the weapons, and a lot of the enemies make a lot of cool sounds when their heads explode when you shoot them in the head, and like, you know, like when they roar like some of the monsters in the game. The soundtrack is also nicely cinematic and it adds a lot of tension during the action scenes as well. So overall, Resident Evil 5 is a truly fantastic game in my opinion. I don't think it's quite as good as Resident Evil 4 in terms of game design and enemy design, and the environments were a bit more varied and interesting to look at in Resident Evil 4, but it is slightly better than Resident Evil 4 in terms of the story. Like I said at the beginning of this review, this game may not appeal at first to anyone who's used to Gears of War run-and-gun style game. I definitely understand that this game has a bit of a steeper learning curve compared to a lot of other games out there, but I truly think that if you take a bit more time to get used to the gameplay style, then you'll manage to enjoy it a lot, like I do. Whether you've been a Resident Evil fan or not, if you've been impressed with any third-person action game recently, then chances are if you haven't played this, then you're going to be blown away by it. I fully recommend Resident Evil 5.
Look out!